The stars burned cold and silent in the Vela sector as the USN's Healing Grace drifted through the aftermath of war. The ship was massive and painted bright white with huge red crosses on every side that could be seen from thousands of kilometers away. She was a hospital ship, and she belonged to the United States Space Navy. Captain Emily Dawson stood on the bridge with her hands behind her back. She was a tall woman with gray streaks in her dark hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. But she was not here to fight. She was here to heal. On the screens before her, the debris field stretched for hundreds of kilometers. Broken ships tumbled through the void. Some still burned with strange fires that needed no oxygen. Others were dark and cold and dead. The Battle of Kethris Prime had ended 6 hours ago, but the dying had not stopped. Lieutenant James Cooper sat at the tactical station. He was young and still believed the universe made sense. He looked up from his console with worry on his face. "Ma'am, we are picking up life signs from that Renari cruiser. Their atmosphere is venting. They have maybe 2 hours before everyone aboard suffocates." Dawson did not hesitate. "Helm, bring us alongside. Medical teams prepare for non-oxygen breathers. I want full hazmat protocols and xenobiology staff standing by." The bridge crew moved fast. They had done this many times before. It did not matter that the Renari had been fighting against the Coalition just hours ago. It did not matter that they were technically enemies. The Healing Grace answered all distress calls. That was the rule. That was the oath. Down in Surgery Bay 7, Dr. Rachel Kim was already preparing her team. She was small and quick with steady hands that never shook, no matter how bad things got. She had grown up in Chicago and had wanted to be a doctor since she was 5 years old. Now she was chief medical officer on a starship, and she saved lives that no human had ever saved before. The first Renari casualties came through the airlock on hovering stretchers. They were insectoid beings with 6 limbs and compound eyes that reflected the light in strange ways. Their exoskeletons were cracked and leaking pale blue fluid. They clicked and buzzed in terror when they saw the humans. Kim understood their fear. To most species in the galaxy, humans were monsters. Earth was what they called a death world. The gravity was crushing. The atmosphere was corrosive. The water that covered most of the planet was a universal solvent that could dissolve almost anything. The native life had evolved to be tough and aggressive and persistent. And humans were the apex predators of that nightmare world. She held up her hands to show she meant no harm. A translation device hung around her neck and converted her words into the harmonic language of the Renari. "You are safe now. We are doctors. We are here to help you." The Renari did not believe her at first. How could they? How could they? They had been taught since hatching that Deathworlders were dangerous beyond measure. But as the hours passed and the human doctors worked without rest to save their lives, they began to understand. One of the patients was Ambassador Thelvan. He was old for his kind with a faded carapace and wise eyes. A piece of shrapnel had torn away 2 of his 6 limbs, and he had lost a lot of blood. Dr. Kim spent 4 hours in surgery, regrowing his limbs using technology that his people considered impossible. When he woke in the recovery ward, he saw something that confused him deeply. In the bed next to him was a Coalition soldier, a being from a species that had been at war with the Renari for 3 generations. And on the other side was a Dominion officer whose escape pod had been found drifting and forgotten by his own fleet. All 3 of them were being treated by the same human nurses. All 3 of them were receiving the same care, the same medicine, the same kindness. Ambassador Thelvan watched a young human woman change the bandages on the Dominion officer. The officer was in pain and scared, but the nurse spoke to him softly and held his hand until the fear passed. Then she moved to the Coalition soldier and did the same thing. Then she came to Thelvan and smiled at him. "How are you feeling, Ambassador? Can I get you anything?" He stared at her for a long moment. He had lived for 90 years and had seen many things, but he had never seen anything like this. "Why are you doing this? We are your enemies. We were trying to kill your allies just this morning." The nurse checked his vitals on a small device. She was young and had freckles on her nose and looked like she should be studying at a university instead of working on a warship in the middle of a war zone. "In here you are not enemies, Ambassador. In here you are just patients. And patients get taken care of. That is the rule." Thelvan clicked in confusion. "But we have killed your people. Our weapons have destroyed your ships. How can you just forget that?" The nurse looked at him with something in her eyes that he could not name. It was not anger. It was not pity. It was something else. Something he had no word for. "We do not forget, Ambassador. We just choose not to let it stop us from doing what is right." She finished checking his vitals and moved on to the next patient. Thelvan lay in his bed and stared at the ceiling and tried to understand. By the end of the first day, the Healing Grace had rescued 2,847 survivors from the debris field. Renari and Coalition and Dominion all mixed together in the medical base. Old enemies lay side by side and were healed by the same hands. Captain Dawson walked through the wards that night. She stopped at each bed and spoke to each patient. She learned their names. She asked about their families. She thanked them for allowing her crew to help them. The Dominion officer she spoke to was named Vex, and he was terrified of her. He had heard stories about Deathworlders all his life. Stories about their impossible strength and their love of violence and their refusal to die. He expected her to interrogate him or torture him, or at least treat him as a prisoner. Instead, she asked him if the food was acceptable for his species. She asked if the temperature in the ward was comfortable. She asked if there was anyone she should contact to let them know he was alive. Vex did not understand. He could not understand. His entire worldview was cracking apart. "You saved my life," he said. "Your doctors rebuilt my shattered bones and stopped the bleeding in my brain. And now you ask if I am comfortable. Why?" Dawson looked at him with those steady gray eyes. "Because you are a living being who is hurt and scared and alone. And as long as you are on my ship, you are under my protection. That is what it means to be human, Officer Vex. We protect the helpless, even when they used to be our enemies." She moved on to the next bed. Vex lay in the darkness and felt something strange happening in his chest. Something that felt almost like hope. In the galaxy beyond the Healing Grace, the war continued. Ships fought and died. Planets burned. Species that had hated each other for millennia found new reasons to keep hating. But here in this one small ship, floating in the void, something different was happening. Here the monsters of Earth were teaching the galaxy what mercy really meant. 3 weeks passed, and the USN's Healing Grace became something more than a ship. She became a legend. Word spread through the subspace communication networks faster than any ship could travel. There was a human hospital vessel in the Vela sector that turned no one away. It did not matter what species you were. It did not matter what side of the war you fought on. It did not matter what crimes you had committed. If you were hurt, the Healing Grace would save you. Pirates who had lost limbs in battles with security forces found themselves in beds next to the very officers who had shot them. Soldiers from species that had been killing each other for centuries lay in the same recovery wards and ate the same food and watched the same human nurses care for them all. Commander David Park stood in the supply room and counted the remaining medical containers with growing worry. He was a serious man with broad shoulders and a calm voice that never rose even in crisis. He had served with Captain Dawson for 12 years and trusted her completely. But the numbers did not lie. We are using resources faster than Command expected, he told her when she came to check on the inventory. At this rate, we will need resupply in 2 weeks. Maybe less if we keep taking on patients at this pace. Dawson nodded. She had expected this. The healing grace was designed to operate independently for 6 months, but that calculation had assumed normal casualty rates. Nothing about this mission was normal. I have requested emergency provisions from Starbase. 7. They should reach us in 10 days. Until then, we keep working. Park did not argue. He knew there was no point. The captain would never turn away a patient to save supplies. That was simply not who she was. The ship's reputation had started to draw unexpected visitors. A delegation from the Morath hegemony arrived in a crystalline vessel that sang with strange harmonics as it approached. The Morath had never formally contacted humanity before. They were ancient and powerful and considered most species in the galaxy to be too primitive for their attention. Their ambassador was named Keleth, and he was 12 feet tall and made of living crystal that shifted colors as he spoke. He requested permission to observe the medical operations, and Dawson granted it. Without hesitation, for 3 days Keleth walked through the wards and watched the human doctors work. He saw them perform surgeries that his people considered impossible. He saw them regrow limbs and repair organs and bring patients back from the edge of death using nothing but skill and determination and technology they had invented themselves. On the 3rd day, he found Dr. Michael Torres in the xenobiology laboratory. Torres was the head of alien medicine on the ship. He was a big man with gentle hands and a laugh that could fill a room. He had spent 30 years learning how to heal species that did not even breathe the same air as humans. Keleth stood in the doorway and watched Torres work on a sample of Renari blood. Finally, he spoke. Your kind evolved on a world of poison air and crushing gravity and liquid water that dissolves almost everything it touches. You are impossibly strong and impossibly resilient. Your very existence defies probability. And yet you use these gifts not to conquer, but to heal. I do not understand. Torres looked up from his work and smiled. Where we come from, Ambassador, being strong means protecting those who cannot protect themselves. That is what we teach our children before they can even walk. The strong help the weak. That is just how it is. Keleth was silent for a long moment. His crystalline body shifted from deep blue to pale gold as he processed this information. We have greatly misunderstood your species, he said at last. We thought you were simply predators. We did not realize you were also guardians. Torres shrugged. We are both, Ambassador. That is the human way. We can be the most dangerous things in the room and also the most gentle. It just depends on what the situation requires. While Keleth learned about humanity, in the medical base something darker was happening far away. In the command center of the Dominion, 3rd Fleet Admiral Vexnar studied the reports about the healing grace with growing interest. He was old and cruel and had risen to his position by destroying everyone who stood in his way. He saw the galaxy as a place of endless competition, where only the strong survived. To him, the humans were a puzzle. They had power, but they did not use it to dominate. They had strength, but they used it to protect the weak. This seemed like madness to him. Or perhaps it was just stupidity. Either way, it was an opportunity. A hospital ship he mused to his staff. Lightly armed, filled with wounded enemies, probably containing valuable intelligence about coalition medical technology and strategy. And the humans are too naive to realize how vulnerable they have made themselves. His tactical officer looked uncertain. Sir, the Terran Navy has a reputation. Their ships are not easy targets, even when they appear weak. Vexnar waved away the concern. 1 hospital ship against 12 warships. There is no outcome where we lose. And even if the humans object, what can they do? They are spread thin across the sector. By the time reinforcements arrive, we will be long gone. He began planning the attack. He would drop out of hyperspace close to the healing grace and demand immediate surrender. If the humans complied, he would take the ship and all its secrets. If they resisted, he would destroy them and claim they had been harboring weapons. Either way, he would win. What Vexnar did not understand was that he was not hunting a sheep. He was hunting a wolf that had chosen to dress in sheep's clothing. And the wolf was about to show its teeth. Back on the healing grace, life continued as normal. Patients recovered and were transferred to neutral stations. New casualties arrived from skirmishes across the sector. The Arkim performed 3 surgeries in one day and still found time to teach a young Renari nurse how to properly sterilize human medical instruments. Ambassador Thel Vaughn had recovered fully. His new limbs worked perfectly, and he could have left the ship weeks ago. But he stayed. He wanted to understand these strange creatures who had saved his life. He spent hours talking to the crew. He learned about Earth and its oceans of deadly water and its atmosphere that would kill most species in minutes. He learned about human history and their endless wars against each other and how they had somehow learned to reach for the stars instead of destroying themselves. One evening he found Captain Dawson alone on the observation deck. She was looking out at the stars with an expression he could not read. "May I join you, Captain?" She nodded, and he came to stand beside her. They stood in silence for a long moment. "I have been trying to understand your people," he said finally. "I think I am beginning to succeed." "And what have you learned?" Ambassador Dawson turned to look at him with those steady human eyes. "I have learned that you are not the monsters we believed you to be. You are something far more complicated. You are predators who have chosen to be healers. You are warriors who have chosen to be protectors. You are death that has chosen to give life." She smiled. It was a small, sad smile. "We are trying, Ambassador. We are always trying. Sometimes we fail. Sometimes we fall back into old patterns and hurt each other and destroy what we have built. But we keep trying. That is what makes us human, I think. Not that we are perfect, but that we never stop trying to be better." Thulvan clicked softly. It was the Renari sound for respect. "I believe you, Captain. And I believe your people may be exactly what this galaxy needs." Neither of them knew that in 12 hours, the Dominion fleet would arrive. Neither of them knew that everything was about to change. But the stars kept burning, and the ship kept floating, and somewhere in the dark, Admiral Vexnar was bringing his warships closer. The test of humanity was coming. The attack came at 0347 shipboard time, when most of the crew was sleeping and the lights in the corridors had dimmed to simulate night. Lieutenant James Cooper was on bridge duty when his console suddenly lit up with warning signals. He sat up straight and felt his heart begin to pound as he read the data. "Multiple hyperspace exits," he announced. 12 contacts. Dominion signatures. They are dropping out of hyperspace right on top of us. The bridge crew moved fast. Within seconds, every station was manned and every system was active. Captain Dawson arrived on the bridge, still pulling on her uniform jacket. Her gray hair was messy from sleep, but her eyes were sharp and clear. Report. Cooper swallowed hard. 12 Dominion warships, Captain. 4 destroyers. 6 cruisers. 2 heavy battleships. They have formed an attack formation around us. There is nowhere to run." Dawson walked to her command chair and sat down. Her face showed no fear, only calm determination. "All hands battle stations. But do not fire unless fired upon. I repeat, do not fire unless fired upon. Communications, open a channel to the lead vessel." The main screen flickered, and then the face of Admiral Vexnar appeared. He was a reptilian being with scales that had faded to gray with age and eyes that held no warmth at all. He smiled when he saw Dawson, and his teeth were sharp and yellow. "Captain Dawson of the Terran Hospital ship Healing Grace. I am Admiral Vex Nar of the Dominion Third Fleet. You will surrender your vessel and all personnel immediately. Any resistance will result in your complete destruction." Dawson did not blink. She did not raise her voice. She spoke as calmly as if she were ordering coffee. "Admiral Vex Nar, this is a non-combatant medical vessel operating under the Terran Conventions of War. We have wounded from all factions aboard, including Dominion citizens, who were rescued from your own destroyed vessels. Stand down immediately." Vex Nar laughed. It was an ugly sound. "Your laws mean nothing to the Dominion captain. You have 1 minute to begin evacuation procedures and prepare for boarding. After that, we will open fire." Dawson leaned forward slightly. "Admiral, I am going to give you one chance to reconsider. What you are proposing is a war crime under both Terran and Galactic law. The penalties are severe." Vex Nar laughed again. "And who will enforce these penalties, Captain?" "You. One hospital ship against my fleet. You have no power here. Then I suggest you scan our hull very carefully, Admiral, before you make your next decision." Something in her voice made Vex Nar pause. He gestured to his tactical officer, who began running a deep scan of the human ship. The results made his blood run cold. The Healing Grace was not what she appeared to be. The white painted hull that looked so peaceful and harmless was sliding open in dozens of places. Behind those hull plates were weapons. Not the small defensive systems that a hospital ship might carry for protection against pirates. Real weapons. Warship weapons. Missile batteries emerged from hidden compartments. Point defense systems locked onto the Dominion ships. And something else was powering up. Something his tactical officer could barely identify. The computer called them plasma projectors, but the power readings made no sense. Admiral. The tactical officer's voice was shaking. "Those plasma projectors. They are rated for planetary bombardment. A single shot could destroy any ship in our fleet." Vex Nar stared at the screen. This was not possible. Hospital ships did not carry planet-killer weapons. Hospital ships were soft targets. Easy prey. That was why he had come. Captain Dawson spoke again, and her voice was still calm, but now there was something underneath it. Something cold and hard and very, very dangerous. The Terran Navy does not send hospital ships into contested space without protection, Admiral. We just do not advertise what that protection looks like. You have 60 seconds to withdraw your fleet before I show you why attacking a Deathworlder vessel of any kind is a very bad idea. In the medical bays below, the patients felt the ship shudder as weapon systems came online. The lights flickered, and a calm voice announced battle stations over the intercom. Dr. Kim moved quickly through her wards. She and her staff began securing patients to their beds and preparing for possible combat maneuvers. There was fear in the air, but also something else. Something unexpected. The Dominion officer named Vex, who had been rescued weeks ago, looked at the human nurse strapping him in. She was the same young woman with freckles who had held his hand when he was scared. "What is happening?" he asked. "Your people are attacking us," she said. Her voice was calm, but her hands were shaking slightly. "We are going to have to fight them." Vex felt sick. "But I am Dominion. Why are you still protecting me?" The nurse finished securing his restraints and looked at him. "Because you are our patient. That does not change just because your government does something stupid." She moved on to the next bed. Vex lay there and felt something breaking inside him. Everything he had been taught about Deathworlders was wrong. Everything. On the bridge, Captain Dawson watched the countdown on her display. 30 seconds. Commander Park stood beside her. His face was calm, but she could see the tension in his shoulders. "If they call our bluff," he said quietly, "It is not a bluff, David. These weapons are real. I just hoped we would never have to use them." 20 seconds. The Dominion fleet held position. Vexnar was staring at his tactical display and trying to calculate. 12 ships against 1. Even with hidden weapons, those odds should favor him. The human was probably bluffing. Deathworlders were known for their aggression, but they were also known for their mercy. They would not actually fire on ships full of living beings. 10 seconds. Vexnar made his decision. He was a predator. He did not back down from prey. All ships he commanded. Open fire. The space around the Healing Grace erupted in weapons fire. Missiles and plasma bolts and railgun rounds streaked toward the White Hospital ship from every direction. And then Captain Emily Dawson showed the galaxy what happened when you threatened her patience. The Healing Grace moved. That was the only way to describe it. The massive ship that should have been slow and clumsy suddenly danced like a firecraft. She twisted and rolled and somehow was never where the weapons were aiming. Her point defense systems created a wall of intercepting fire. Missiles exploded harmlessly in space. Plasma bolts were deflected by energy shields that should not have existed on a medical vessel. And then she fired back. The first Dominion destroyer simply ceased to exist. One moment, it was there launching weapons at the human ship. The next moment, it was an expanding cloud of superheated plasma. The shot had come from one of the planetary bombardment projectors, and it had punched through the destroyer's shields like they were not there at all. The bridge of the Healing Grace was silent, except for the hum of equipment. No one cheered. No one celebrated. They were not warriors who enjoyed killing. They were healers who had been forced to fight. Dawson watched the debris cloud that had been a ship full of living beings. Her face was stone. Her voice when she spoke was steady. "Admiral Vexnar, you have 11 ships remaining. Withdraw now or I will destroy every vessel in your fleet. This is your final warning." The response was another salvo of weapons fired. "Very well," Dawson said quietly. "Continue firing." The battle had begun in earnest, and the galaxy was about to learn why you never ever attack a Deathworlder hospital ship. The battle lasted 47 seconds. In that time, the Dominion Third Fleet went from 12 warships to 0. Captain Dawson did not enjoy any of it. Each time a Dominion ship exploded on her screen, she felt the weight of the lives ending. They were enemies, yes. They had tried to kill her and her crew and her patients. But they were still living beings, and their deaths were still a tragedy. She gave them every chance. After the first destroyer died, she demanded surrender. After the second and third, she demanded it again. She warned them that she would not stop until they did. Admiral Vexnar refused. His pride would not let him retreat from a single hospital ship. His arrogance told him that the next shot would get through. His hatred of humanity blinded him to the simple truth that he had already lost. The Healing Grace danced through the weapon's fire like a ghost. She was too fast, too agile, too well defended. The Dominion weapons could not touch her, but her weapons touched them just fine. The fourth destroyer vanished in fire. Then the first cruiser. Then the second. Commander Park coordinated the ship's movements while Dawson commanded the battle. Their voices never rose. Their hands never shook. They were professionals doing a terrible job as well as it could be done. In the medical bays below, Dr. Kim and her staff worked to keep the patients calm. The ship was maneuvering hard, and the artificial gravity could not compensate for everything. Patients were thrown against their restraints. Some screamed in fear. Others prayed to gods whose names the humans did not know. Dr. Kim moved from bed to bed. She checked restraints. She adjusted medications. She held hands and spoke soft words and did everything she could to comfort beings. who were watching their own people die in the battle outside. The Renari ambassador, Thelvan, watched through a window as another Dominion cruiser exploded. He had been a diplomat for 50 years. He had seen wars and treaties and betrayals and alliances. But he had never seen anything like this. The humans were winning. They were winning easily. Their hospital ship was destroying a war fleet and making it look simple. And yet there was no joy in their victory. No celebration. The nurses who moved through the wards had tears in their eyes, even as they cared for the Dominion wounded who lay in the beds. "What are you?" Thelvan whispered to himself. "What kind of beings are you?" On the bridge, the situation was becoming clearer. The Dominion fleet was breaking. Some ships were trying to retreat, but the Healing Grace was faster. Others were launching escape pods and abandoning ship. "Dawson, let those ones go." Lieutenant Cooper reported from Tactical. "Admiral Vex Nar's flagship is the only major combatant remaining, Captain. He's charging his main weapons. I think he's planning one final attack." Dawson nodded. She had expected this. Vex Nar was the type to go down fighting rather than admit defeat. It was brave in its own way. And stupid. And wasteful of the lives aboard his ship. Target his weapon systems and engines, only, she ordered. "I want that ship disabled, not destroyed. He has nearly 3,000 crew aboard. I will not kill them all if I can avoid it." The plasma projectors adjusted their aim. They fired precisely controlled bursts that cut through the flagship's shields and destroyed its weapons without rupturing the hull. The massive battleship went dark and began to drift. Silence fell across the battlefield. The Healing Grace floated alone among the debris of 12 warships. Escape pods tumbled through space by the hundreds. Distress signals filled every frequency. Dawson stood up from her command chair. Her legs were steady, but her heart was heavy. "All hands," she announced over the shipwide intercom. "The battle is over. The Dominion fleet has been neutralized. We have taken no casualties and no significant damage. But there are thousands of survivors out there who need our help. Medical teams prepare for mass casualty intake. Everyone else assist with rescue operations." She paused and took a breath. "I know what we just did. I know it was necessary. But I also know that each of those ships was crewed by living beings who had families and dreams and lives they wanted to live. We did not choose this fight, but we ended it. And now we will do what we always do. We will help everyone who needs help. Even our enemies. Especially our enemies. That is who we are." Dawson out. Lieutenant Cooper stared at her. They just tried to kill us. They attacked a hospital ship full of wounded. And you want us to rescue them? Dawson looked at him. Her eyes were tired, but her voice was firm. "Yes, Lieutenant. I do, because that is exactly what makes us different from them. They saw wounded enemies and wanted to hurt them more. We see wounded enemies and we want to heal them. That is the human way. And I will not let Admiral Vex Nar turn us into something we are not." She walked toward the turbolift. "Helm, bring us alongside the nearest escape pods. Begin rescue operations immediately." For the next 6 hours, the crew of the Healing Grace worked without rest. They pulled survivors from escape pods and disabled ships. They treated burns and wounds and radiation sickness. They saved the lives of beings who had been trying to kill them just hours before. Admiral Vex Nar was brought aboard on a stretcher. He had been injured when his bridge was hit. His scales were cracked and his left arm was gone. He was barely conscious, but he recognized the human doctor who leaned over him. It was Dr. Kim, the same doctor who had healed so many before. She looked at his wounds with the same calm, professional expression she always wore. "Get that arm stabilized," she ordered her team. "Prep surgery bay 12. We need to stop the internal bleeding before we can do anything else." Vex Nar tried to speak. His voice was weak and filled with pain. Why? We tried to destroy you. Why are you saving me? Dr. Kim looked down at him. For a moment, her expression showed something that might have been pity or anger or both. Because you are hurt, she said simply. And I am a doctor. That is all the reason I need. She turned away and began preparing for surgery. Vexnar closed his eyes and felt consciousness slipping away. His last thought before the darkness took him was that he had been wrong about everything. The Deathworlders were not monsters. They were something far more terrifying. They were kind. And they had chosen to be kind even to those who had tried to kill. Then in the recovery ward, Officer Vex lay in his bed and watched through the window as more survivors were brought aboard. He saw Dominion soldiers placed in beds next to Coalition wounded. He saw human nurses treat them all with the same gentle care. The young nurse with freckles came to check on him. She looked tired. There were dark circles under her eyes, and her hands were not quite steady. How are you feeling? She asked. Confused, he admitted. Ashamed. I do not understand why you are doing this. We are your enemies. We attacked you, and you just keep helping us. The nurse sat down on the edge of his bed. She was quiet for a moment. Do you know what my grandfather told me before I joined the Navy? She said at last. He said that anyone can be cruel. Cruelty is easy. It takes no effort to hurt someone who has hurt you. But kindness is hard. Kindness takes strength. And the people who are strongest are the ones who choose to be kind even when they have every reason not to. She looked at him with those strange human eyes. We are not helping you. Because you deserve it, Officer Vex. We are helping you. Because we deserve to be the kind of people who help. She stood up and checked his vitals. One more time. Get some rest. You are safe now. She moved on to the next patient. Vex lay in the darkness and felt tears leaking from his eyes. He did not try to stop them. Somewhere out in the void, the debris of 12 warships floated among the stars. And aboard the Healing Grace, a crew of Deathworlders continued to heal everyone who needed healing. Because that was what humans did. That was what humans had always done.